This is Gail, and welcome to my channel. Tonight we are talking about solo female travel. And we're going to talk about why women travel by themselves and lots of other things, how to get started in solo female travel. And we'll talk about the different types of solo travel. And we're going to talk about moving past the fear that stops a lot of women from traveling. And I'll talk about some ideas for road trips and also some beginner solo travel tips to try to take the stress out of traveling. So we're going to hit some highlights tonight, and I want to welcome you. I see we have already been joined by Women's Station Channel. So, hi, Lori. It's good to see you. Oh, you're so glad you have extra time. Okay, awesome. Peter Parker is here. Uh-oh, wait a minute. I say that. Peter, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I know you shared before that he's had some health problems, and let me write this down so I can go back to praying for him. Keep us posted, please, on that. Well, there we go. Okay. So I'm writing this down. So I will know to pray. But thank you for coming in for what you can. I appreciate it. You take care of your dad, okay? I'll get that down. All right, so this is our first Saturday night, with it being at 7:30. So let me know what you think, okay? Does this work out better for you? Not better? You love it, hate it? Let me know. Drop that down in the comments. If you all are watching on the replay, let me know what you think, because this show is for you all, and I like and value your input. So behind me, you see a tail wagging, and you are not supposed to be in here. You are supposed to be in your crate. I do believe that somebody has let himself out of his crate because he's standing right here, and you're not supposed to be here. Okay, tell you what, go find Dad. Go find him. Find Dad. Okay. It's a really quick rundown on service dog Pipsy there. He's been having some problems. We have him on crate rest, which is where he was supposed to be. Obviously, he's let himself out of the crate again. But he's had a hip and back issue. Now he travels with me. I mean, he's my service dog, so he does lots and lots of things for me. And somebody asked me one day, how can I call it solo travel if my dog is with me? And she was kidding, but it's also a valid question. How do you say you're doing solo travel if you're not by yourself? And so we're going to talk about that, because it goes into partially what solo travel is. Okay. So very loosely, we are going to look at the definition for solo travel. And so the way we're defining solo travel is women, because we're talking about solo female travel, who go out and travel and leave the husbands, the kiddos behind, and kind of break out of their comfort zone. So that's one type of solo female travel, is the idea of just leaving behind and going traveling, whether you're on a girlfriend's getaway or whether you're traveling on a designated tour group. We're talking about that because you feel like you're solo, okay? Because in a lot of ways you are, because you have the freedom on the trip to do what you want to and go where you want to. The other thing is travel alone. A lot of women like traveling alone. They go out, they like going hiking, they like going backpacking, and so they're out and they're alone, and that is a type of solo female travel as well. Okay, he's in Fargo. Okay, I hope you don't lose him. I hope you don't. Okay, and I've got it written down, so I will be praying, but keep us posted, okay? Because I know it's a tough time. Okay. All right, so that's sort of going back to the stream here. That's sort of our description, our definition, if you will, for solo female travel. So, solo female travel is women who travel for any length of time for leisure or work by herself, whether as part of a group, there are tour groups, girlfriends, getaways, or alone strictly by herself. So, that's the definition we're working on. You would be surprised at how many women out there are doing the solo female travel. And let's see, Lori's back. Hi again, Lori. Welcome. I looked up some statistics online about that. She Packs Light is where I went for my statistic. I can't talk tonight. I am so sorry. That's where I went for the statistics. And let me open the link for you so you can see, because you're going to be really impressed, I think, at the numbers that we are looking at for solo female travel. And let's see. Here we go. This is trends for 2022, by the way. She Packs Like, Lite, that's how it's spelled. And it says she wasn't always packing light, that she has lugged enormous canvas duffel bags through the streets of Paris and lost luggage by the airlines more times than she can count. So we're going to go down, though, and we're going to look at her statistics. So why should we care about solo travel statistics? Well, it says solo women spent $3,000 per week on accommodations pre-pandemic. But here's an interesting stat that, I thought it was interesting. Y'all can tell me what you think. And that is 35.1% of women who travel alone spent more than $1,000 on their trip. So let's flip that. Let's turn that kind of the inside out and look at it backwards. Because when I saw it, I was like, wait a minute. Other than going to Alaska on behalf of a mission team, I don't think I've spent more than $1,000 on a trip. And so when you look at it kind of backwards, okay, about 74% of the people who travel spend less than $1,000 on their trip. And thinking of it that way made me feel a whole lot better, because to me, that is a lot of money, lots and lots. And we're going to talk about why some women might choose to spend more than that on a trip in a little bit later. And then it says, okay, breakdown by age groups and gender. I thought this was fascinating because Instagram would have us believe that most of the people who travel, most of the women who travel are young, right? We see all these wonderful Instagram pictures and videos, and we get the idea that it's all younger girls who are traveling, or it's young couples. But according to this statistic, I'm going to go back to it here in a second. According to this, 40% of baby boomers took a solo trip in the last year, and 86% of solo travelers are over age 35. 86% are over age 35. So I thought that was really cool. Let me go back and bring up the screen that I was typing into about the Instagram. And so I just went to Instagram, typed in #travel, and you can see all of these photos, and they all look so young, right? Especially the ladies, the girls. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just looking at this from an old person's perspective. Although I don't really think I'm that old because I'm in my mid-50s, but some people do. And I'm not going to ask you to type in what you think on that, okay? No. But just to me, those statistics, 86% of the solo travelers are over 35. Though that statistic blew away this Instagram myth that you're young and you're sexy and you're the one that's traveling, right? And for me, that was very reassuring, not being young or sexy. But I do like to travel, and I do like solo female travel. So Women's Station Channel is agreeing with the expense. It's hard to get things in small quantities. Okay. Okay, I can understand that too. That makes sense. Um, a lot more women seniors are solo traveling out of necessity. And I think that's true. I think that's true. Uh, and it's not glorious anymore. LOL. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It might not be, but there's a lot of reasons for that. And it says 21% of baby boomers are planning to take a solo travel experience in the future. So I think word's getting out that it can be a lot of fun to travel solo and you can have some really great experiences. If 86% of solo travelers are over 35 and 21% of baby boomers are planning to take a solo trip in the future, then that tells me that this is a horizon that's expanding. So, yeah. And it is possible, Lori, I think too, there's a possibility. She's saying that agreeing with the expense, it's hard to get things in small quantities. And you do have some fixed expenses to take into consideration. You know, your fixed expenses on a trip are gas, right? Because you know you've got to pay that per gallon price no matter where you are. And your lodging is somewhat fixed because you can control where you stay, you just can't control how much you pay. Food is controllable. You can eat out of a cooler in your car, or you can dine in restaurants 3 times a day plus snacks. And that is your controllable expense. And I think we've talked about that on a previous live stream. If not, we'll go back and look at that. Controllable versus uncontrollable. But you're right. And you do have about the same cost of gas if you're driving and taking a road trip for one person as you do if you've got four. But the difference is you're sharing that gas cost. Let's see what's coming up here. Women's Station Channel is saying it seems like the younger ones are complaining more now about how hard it is traveling alone. That may be. That may be. You know, there is a lot of concern about traveling alone. You know, is it safe? What can you do to make it safer to travel alone as a woman? So there is some concerns about that, but I hear you. But there's also a lot of women who are in the younger ages who are just shaking off those societal norms and they are out there, which is really cool for me. Lori's saying my food kept getting dripping wet. Yeah. And really, your alternatives for that are to get a little fridge for your car and use ice blocks instead of liquid ice. But your ice blocks are going to thaw. So, you know, that's a real challenge. And I have put ice in glass containers and set those glass containers in the cooler, and then whenever I bought ice, I just refilled it and put it in the cooler, and that works up to a point. But yeah, your food getting dripping wet is a consideration. I did a live stream on non-perishable foods that you can take on a trip, and there's some things those are things that I take on trips that are non-perishable, and it really helps. And that does cut cost, but still you are purchasing those items. So yeah, a good point there. Good point. And of course, you know, once your food gets ruined, you got to go out and repurchase it, or you got to go out to a restaurant. So, you know, so why do women travel by themselves? I think that before we get too far into the live stream tonight, I think we need to talk about why women travel by themselves. And there are lots of reasons for that, but primarily it breaks down into leisure travel, or business travel. That's generally your two big travel categories. So when a woman is traveling on business and she's going, let's say, to a conference, or she's going to a meeting, let's say, in the next town, and she's there and it's a day trip, or she's having to spend a night, that is solo female travel. Okay. Just the same as if she's going to go on vacation, or she and the girlfriends, they're going to go solo and leave the families behind, or she's going to sign up with a tour group. Those are all solo female traveling experiences. Grief travel is another reason why some women will travel by themselves, and that is sort of a realigning, if you will, or getting their breath again after a very tragic and sad experience. So those are some of the reasons why women travel by themselves. But also, sometimes we want to go someplace and maybe the person we're married to can't get off from work, is not interested in going. There's a lot of reasons why, that way. So there are all sorts of things that come into play, and sometimes women will take part of the trip by themselves and then be joined by family or friends later. And that's okay too. So all kinds of travel. Let's see. Let me go here. Lori said she wished she knew about all the choices she had with equipment. The men camping wouldn't tell me. Okay, I hear that, and hopefully that's changing. And now, thank goodness, we've got the internet, so we can look things up. There are YouTuber channels, Bob Wells, for example, who is out there and they're sharing their knowledge and they're making it easier. I would never have known about the little refrigerator for my car had it not been for YouTube. And that refrigerator has made it much easier for me to travel on the road more cost effectively. Okay, and Lori said she needed to know about generators. Generators are an important thing if you're going to do van life or car camping. Generators are hugely helpful. And yeah, I have run across some men camping who took a very dim view, or I'll just say, I won't say camping, I'll say traveling, who took a very dim view of women being out on the road. And I think that there is some stigma that is still a little bit attached to it. I think a lot of women are breaking the stigma down. The folks that we're talking about with the statistics, they're helping to break down that stigma. Because when you think about solo female travel, we talked a little bit about it last week, about the women who travel solo are seen sometimes as being on the fringes of society and as being different. And so there is, I think, a little bit of a stigma, but there's also a mystique with it. And I can remember running into a person in a parking lot of a rest area one day, and we were talking, and he was kind of interested in the trip. And then he said, oops, hold on, I got something in my eye. Okay, anyway, then he said something like, wish you and your husband safe travels, or I hope you and your husband have a great time. And I was like, oh, well, it's not me and my husband, it's me and my service dog. And he turned around and he was like, what? He was like, I would never let my wife do something like that. And then he goes off on this tangent. And I'm like, I just felt so sorry for his wife. And I talk about this frequently because what does that say about how he treats her, how he respects her, how he handles her dreams? Why would he want to hold her back and keep her from doing something that she really wants to do out of a sense of having to give permission, So, yeah, I don't go for that. But anyway, so I certainly hear you and can relate to that. And she's saying that she had a man tell her how to start a fire. I wouldn't have used small twigs. I cooked a lot on the fire pit. Okay. So, that was some helpful information that you were able to get, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So, and I think it's important, one of the reasons why I want to talk about this is because I think it's important for we women to share our information with other women. You know, I love your channel name, Lori. Love your channel name because Women's Station Channel, it's all about women, and you do a lot of women's empowerment on your channel, and we need more of that, and in every area, and when it comes to travel, because there's some fear that women have when it comes to taking the plunge for solo travel. And so when we look at why women travel by themselves and are solo women traveling, then we also look at why women don't travel by themselves. And I feel like fear is a major concern. And when I talk about fear, there's multiple layers of fear. You've got the fear that something's going to go wrong on the trip. And my answer always is it's going to at some point. You got to plan for what happens if something goes wrong. And I think I did a video on that. You've also got to realize that there is fear of safety, but you've also, something we don't talk about is the fear of, what if we go on the trip and something goes right and we just don't have a good time? We just feel like after we try it once that like maybe it's not for us. So you have the fear of, what if it works and I don't like it? What if it works and I do like it? What if I go and something happens and something goes wrong? And there's all kinds of things that can go wrong, from having a vehicle break down to the airlines losing your luggage, right? These things happen. So, I touched last week on figure out what are the things that are most likely to happen and plan for that. Doing those things help. And Women's Station Channel is saying she used to lock her tent with small master locks to protect herself. We should know what sprays, etc., we can use to protect ourselves. I agree. And something that I recommend to women in general is a self-defense class. I don't care if you are traveling or not. Go take a self-defense class. Now, a lot of domestic violence programs, sexual assault programs, some police departments will offer these classes for free. Okay? All you have to do is call them. And if they are not offering something, you can ask, what would it take for me to organize one and you all sponsor it? So basically you're saying, hey, if I can get 5 women together, will you teach this class at your expense? Basically, that's what you're asking, right? So I have taken all of my self-defense classes through nonprofit groups where they offered them for free, or where I put them together for the group and did some networking there. They go over not just how to protect yourself, but they talk about what sprays are effective, what's legal in your state, because what's legal in one state may not be legal in the other. So they go over that in the self-defense classes. So I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage all women, whether you're traveling or not, to go take a class, especially if it's free. You don't have anything to lose. So a real popular one for several years ago, going back, was the rape aggression defense classes, which actually met over several nights, and it gave you a chance to practice your skills there in class, all padded up. And I think you should do that no matter what. My friend Ali, I will not attempt to pronounce that last name, okay? I will butcher it. I don't want to butcher it. Her friend, who is the medium worldweight champion boxer, trains women in self-defense. You can't believe the turnaround in women's state of mind. Oh, yeah. Yes, I can. It's amazing. I have seen it myself when women come in to the self-defense class and they leave and they're walking 10 feet off the ground. It is the best thing. So I'm glad he's teaching those classes. That's pretty awesome. I am really glad he's out there because we need that. And we need the self-defense classes offered in a way that we can digest it and understand it. Some people are guilty of using like some lingo. It's kind of like the medical field. People will use lingo and they don't mean to not be able to be understood, but it just happens. So great. I'm glad that there's somebody out there doing that. So tell your friend that your other friend says thank you. So awesome. Awesome, awesome. So I think a lot of people too wonder like how to get started in solo female travel because we've got more options than we used to. And it's pretty much laid out, but it can be a little overwhelming. And so when you start doing the research, it you can kind of get just buried under all this information. So to kind of break it down really quickly, we talked about it's usually leisure or work. So look at how you're traveling. Are you going to travel for, or the type of travel you're taking rather, are you going to travel for work or are you traveling for business? Because if you're traveling from work, a really easy way to do some extra traveling and cut your expenses is to add a couple of days on before your work trip or after. And sometimes, and I did something on this too, but sometimes you can add those dates on and make your company very, very happy. Because sometimes if you're, and especially, oh my gosh, especially if you're looking at airline tickets and rental cars, sometimes expanding those dates gives the company a better price. And so sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they can be very, very happy about letting you get the extra time off. For example, someone I know is going on a trip this past summer. Their original tickets that they were looking at was going to have them leaving on Saturday or Sunday to get back to work. They looked at some extra days out and went back to their boss and said, hey, you're going to save $150 on these tickets if I come back on Tuesday, but I won't be in the office until Wednesday. So if I take my personal days for these 2 days, you're going to save the $150. Oh, and by the way, this is going to put us onto a 1-week rental instead of the rental for just a few days. And you're going to be saving another, like, I want to say $80 on the rental car. So all told, by adding 2 days onto that trip, they were saving, over $200. Now, when you start talking figures like that, you get your boss's attention. And for the person on the trip, basically what you've done is if you were going to leave on Sunday and you add on leaving on Tuesday, you have added on a day and a half onto your trip. And so that's a way to be able to travel solo. You're traveling on business, but you're doing this add-on. Okay. And so that's one way that you can travel solo and reduce your expenses. Now, not every woman travels for work. I get it. But just if you are, that's something to keep in mind. Okay. And let's see. Women's Station Channel. The structure of the woman's body and her demeanor in the video I saw was exemplary after sparring with him. He said he'd do that for me, but I'd have to get out to him in Canada. That's so awesome, though. And if anybody can figure out how to get into Canada, it's going to be you. I mean, how to work out the logistics and the nuts and bolts. Not that you can't get into Canada. I'm not saying that, because you can. But if there's anybody that's going to work out the logistics, it's going to be you, because you've got that planning kind of mind, which is really pretty cool. So who knows? Maybe you could find somebody to go with you. Who knows? Nothing is out of the realm of possibility, right? We have to always believe in good possibilities. So, all right. So going on the women's travel, if you are traveling by yourself, you've got to figure out, where you're going to fit in the categories. And I'm going to pick on Lori's scenario here. And that is, she doesn't want to travel if she goes to Canada for this self-defense class. It's not necessarily work related, but in a lot of fields it could be. So it's going to be leisure travel. And the reason I say in a lot of fields it could be is if you are an advocate for abuse victims, then you may be able to go to Canada and take that self-defense class as part of your job. If you are with law enforcement, you may be able to take it as part of your job. If you want to interview them in person and you are with any kind of media, you may be able to do that as part of your job. As leisure, which is really cool, you're going to have a little more freedom to pick your dates and times based around what the trainer has available. So that would really be leisure travel, okay? And that gives us a starting point. Okay, let me pull this up. Thanks, Gail. You're so sweet. I'd like to train with him and work with him training other women. With you, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think you can do it. And she says she has her new passport. The joys of a shiny new passport. And then she says, "Oh, Gail, I'd love to be an advocate for abused women." Well, I think in a lot of ways you already are. You may not be working for a shelter, but you don't have to necessarily work for a shelter to advocate on behalf of abused women. Speaking out on your channel, on social media, getting the word out there, sharing it, and telling others that, hey, you don't have to be abused. There you go. You're advocating. All right. Getting involved in, I hate to say this word, but getting involved in politics to try to help shelters get funding, that's advocating. So there's a lot of things you can do. And I think you're already doing a lot of those things. And okay, she has her new passport. So, all right. So I'm going to adjust my hat. My hair is pulling back. I know. Me and my hats. And there we are. It just doesn't want to work tonight, does it? Anyway, such is life. Such is life. So, all right. So we're going to talk about leisure travel. So you've got to break it down. Okay. If Lori, for example, was going to travel solo and she's going to go to City A, we'll just call it, in Canada. She already has a place in mind that she's going to go. That's her main objective. Her objective would be to meet this person and take the class. And she already knows where the class is. You may not know exactly the address for the technical end of it, but you know what city it's in. And you can certainly find out the address really easily. And if he offers classes on a schedule, then you know when the class is. So you know where, you know the time of year, okay, and you have the objective of taking the class. Put all of that together, and you have got the makings of a solo female travel experience. From that point forward, what you're doing is working out, are you going to drive or fly? What airport? About getting tickets and finding a place to stay. Now, when you're going on behalf of a conference or you're taking a class, then where you're going to stay, it's really easy to get those recommendations because they may even already be working with a hotel chain or an Airbnb to get those accommodations arranged for you. Whether you buy them or whether they have the rooms set up or whatever, they may already have that relationship there. So you see how a lot of your stress is already cut back. So now you have to research your airlines, your tickets, and your transportation. And we all know that there is Uber, Lyft, and cabs, right? We already know those transportations are out, those options for transportation are out there. And then you have things like hotel shuttles, airport shuttles, and so forth that can also come into play. So you know what you're going to do, you know your city, you know your time of year, and you know where the airport is. So your other arrangements are working out the place to stay and getting to and from the airport. And you already have an idea of how you can get around once you get there, right? And see how that cuts down a lot of your stress when you just kind of look at the whole picture here and you just break it down. So, where I think a lot of women get caught up is, oh, I'd really like to do X, Y, or Z. And then you go, oh, but I can't. But see how you really can? Now, affording it is a challenge, and everybody's got that. We all have to figure out how we're going to pay for the trips, right? But once you've got that broken down, then that alleviates the fear. And on paper, you start thinking, oh, maybe I can really do this. And that is the basis of solo female travel. So if you aren't sure where to begin, there you go. You just did. Okay. And solo does not mean that you're going alone. Solo means that you are traveling solo. I know this, work with me here. I know it can be confusing, but when you're traveling solo, you're talking about leaving your home and leaving your friends. We've all heard the husband or boyfriend that said, yeah, my wife, girlfriend, friend, mother left us and took a trip, right? So there you go. That's your solo trip. And there's a lot of options for people who might want to go solo, but don't want to go alone. And that's tour groups, cruises, church travel groups, volunteer experiences. I'm still getting the footage uploaded from the mission trip that I took. We had women that traveled solo that came together. And there you go. So those are all solo experiences too. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Okay. And let's see. And yeah, a lot of my work revolves around abused women. Speaking of politics, I'm trying to get women to understand they need their Social Security increases to survive. 4 years can be $200 extra. Yeah, that's a biggie. That really helps. That really helps. Absolutely. I am going to have to step away from just a second. I am so sorry. Pipsy is really rattling his crate. My husband had to step outside, and I just need to make sure the dog stays in. I am so sorry. Give me just a minute. I'll be back. Okay, I'm so sorry. Give me a minute. Hi, sorry about that. I appreciate you all hanging out with me there and putting up with me on that. So basically, the thing about Pipsy is that he is on crate rest, and we are having to keep him in as much as possible. And it's kind of a big deal. He's got a hip issue, he's got a back issue, and We're just trying to give him time to heal. On Tuesday, he goes for a shockwave treatment, and hopefully that will help. But he's pretty miserable, and he wants out of the crate, and he doesn't understand why he can't get out. He doesn't understand why he can't be with me, and he can't, and that's because he needs to heal. So we're keeping him in the crate as much as possible. There are times, I will freely admit, we have not done 100% on keeping him crated because he has been so miserable. So the other day, like we went out, I've done this twice now, where we've gone out and we put him in the van, and my husband made a little ramp for him to climb up on, and we went out and we took him in the van, and he just stayed in the van. Like, we didn't get him out at all. I went into the store, but he stayed in. Which still confused him, but he was better with it. But he perked up so much by just riding in that van. It was just, yeah, it was really good for him. So anyway, hopefully Tuesday we'll be back on track. But thank you all for letting me go ahead and get that taken care of with him there, because it is a big deal. So, all right, going back to the topic here. So a lot of women want to travel solo, but they're not sure where to begin. And like I said, that doesn't mean going it alone. Traveling alone is literally what that means. It is by yourself and nobody else. So these are the women who may go out backpacking the Appalachian Trail. They may be through hiking it by themselves, all alone. They're still going to run into some other people, and they may join together for portions of it, but by and large, they're alone. Or they may go out and they may explore BLM land. They may be painters. They may be doing geological surveys. There's all kinds of reasons why women travel alone. And again, it generally breaks down to business or pleasure vacations. Yeah, I can't begin to describe it. He came off of that. He had been, okay, going outside. He gets a little excited. Not very excited, but a little excited. Like, he got a lot excited at first because he was going outside and he thought he was going to go for a walk every time we hit the back door. But then after he's out there and he takes care of business, then his tail drops and he kind of slumps back into the house now. And he wants to play. He wants to play very, very badly, and we can't do that. We can hand him a little toy, but we can't let him like run and romp like he really wants to do. So hopefully Tuesday will be beyond this, at least somewhat. The next few days are going to be like really, really big days for him. We've popped up. He's had another issue that has come up. So he's now going to see his regular vet on Monday and the orthopedic vet on Tuesday. And I'll just go ahead and tell you all, this is actually going to be a travel experience for me. These folks are 3 hours away. I don't have the money to go out and do a hotel. So a few years ago now, my husband and I bought a van, and we made the investment to make the van a van camper. And this was originally as part of a mission trip, but it has become so much more than just missions. So all my doctors are in this same town. It's down in Knoxville. We're like 3 hours from Abingdon, and they're all there. So I used the van for my solo female travel experiences because it's maneuverable and it's inexpensive. And so when I'm looking at a solo female travel experience and I think, how am I going to do this? For me, the answer is really easy. I gas the van and I go. I check the oil and I do tire rotations on my regular schedule. And there we are. We're on the road. So for me, looking at traveling to Knoxville, it's a 3-hour drive. I already know where I'm going to stay. I know where I can spend the night. I'm a Harvest Host member. So you look at, what can you do? What can go wrong? Well, what if you get stuck out and you can't find a place to stay? So my answer to that was Harvest Host. And I love that membership. And I can link it below, or you all can email me. I love it because it provides overnight lodging. They ask you to pay $20 a night to the host, but a lot of hosts don't want that. They do it to like educate people about their farms, or they will do it just to help people come in and understand their museum and so forth. And I always try to look for those places first, right? But anyhow, for me, the solo female travel experience is made simpler by having a van. I'm going to stay in the van. I know that there are truck stops, most Walmarts, most Sam's Clubs, Cracker Barrels, some Targets will let you spend the night. And I don't have to worry about the cost. I don't have to worry about a safe place, because with me in the van, if it starts feeling unsafe, I can leave. Okay? Start that engine and you're just gone. So that makes it a lot easier. And I think more women are turning to vans, minivans, and car camping now to make it easier. It also reduces cost. But not everybody can do that, right? I do have an experience coming up where I have to plan a little differently. If all goes well, this spring, I will be getting another service dog since Pipsy's having some problems. I was hoping my husband could go with me, but it's really going to depend on when it is, because he's got two major things coming up. One's in March, one's in June. They're work, they're required. There's no way he can leave. So I got to figure, like, my luck, that's when the service dog will become available. And it's 10 days in Kansas, and I'll need a night or two, going. So I have a girlfriend that's willing to go with me, bless her heart. If my husband doesn't go, we're going to ditch both of our guys, and we're going to go out and go to Kansas. She's very into animals, so great thing there. But it shifts my expenses. So all of a sudden, whereas last time I went to Kansas, I was able to stay in our travel trailer with my husband, and we paid $100 for the week at a city campground with water and electricity and a dump station. That's a little different than this trip is going to be, because I can't pull the trailer. My husband can. I can pull it. I just can't hook it up because it's like a physical thing about standing up and moving things and balancing and whatnot. So my girlfriend can't either. So that means we're going to have a hotel stay. Well, the cost for the hotel, when I looked it up for the estimated time period that this might be, if it's in June, the hotel was $150, $140, basically $150 a night with tax. So if I'm looking at that from a solo female travel experience, then you can see how that really changes the cost. If it's just me and I'm in my van, I can go back to the campground. But the van's not set up for two people, it's set up for one. So having somebody who's not my husband with me changes the dynamics of the trip. So this is medical related. So it's one of those things that I'm going to have to do. And medical travel is an increasing thing, medical tourism, medical travel. And the idea behind that, it started out when people were going to like developing nations to get medical care cheaper than what they could get it here in the States, which, believe me, can't be that much more difficult to do, right? Because our medical costs are so high. But it has also, it's also encompassing people who travel to get service dogs, people who travel out of town for second opinions, third opinions, to have specialized surgeries. All of that can go into the solo experience. When you're traveling with medical, there's some certain considerations. But again, you know why you're going. You've got the objective. So if your objective is, if you're on vacation, your objective is to relax and have fun, right? If you're going for medical, your objective is to meet with the medical professionals. If your medical travel involves a service dog, then it's your service dog class, and your objective is to come out with a service dog, right? So, looking at it and starting there, you know when your appointment is. So you know what day you have to be there. Your doctors will tell you how long you have to be there. If you're going for 2 days of testing, you've got to be there most likely the night before and the 2 days of testing. Probably that's going to mean staying an extra night. It kind of depends on what your schedule is, because you have to check out of the hotel by 11, right? Usually 11. So what's your schedule? Are you going to need another night? But you know what your objective is. You know when you're going, because you know when your appointments are, and you know what city and you know what time. So looking at medical travel, that takes care of a lot of the stress, because those things are already laid out for you. You have to figure out now how you're going to get there, where you're going to stay, and what your transportation is going to be. I like driving whenever I can, because I've got the transportation. Most of the time it's less expensive, and a lot of the time the time frame is the same or less than when you leave your driveway. So that factors in too. And the reason I know this is because, as far as flying versus driving, is because I've experienced it several times. Now, driving to Alaska is the exception, okay? But, for example, if you live, let's say I lived right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee at one point. Stellar Piper, my daughter, was home from college, so yay, I was getting to see her. She had to change planes in Atlanta. So for us to take her to the airport meant we had to leave 3 hours before she had to be at the airport 2 hours early. Well, she flew from Atlanta to another airport to make connections. I think Memphis, but don't quote me on Memphis. And then to DC. So from the time I left my driveway, 3 hours before the 2 hours that she had to be there, that was a 5-hour block of time. By the time she spent her 2.5-hour layover at whatever airport, that's a 7.5 block of time. From the time she gets to the airport and made all the metro transfers and so forth, that was another 2.5-hour block of time. Well, it takes 9 hours to drive it. So had I started from my driveway, I would have gotten her to school in less time than it took to fly her. And given that the ticket was like almost $600 as opposed to $200 for gas, and then your food expenses you can control. So the other thing is there's no metro fees with that, because you already have your transportation, and her school had free parking. So I was able to pull up, park at the free school, kick her out, and have a nice meal with her. We did do that before we left. But in that case, it would have been simpler, but it would have been a round trip, which I still could have done for less money, right? So you got to look at all that. So, but with medical travel, if you're going to go take the class, then you know the day, date, time, your objective, and yeah, from there, it's a matter of, how are you going to get there and where are you going to stay? The advantage of medical is they have places that they will suggest. When I went to the NIH for medical travel, they had a lodge they put me in. Now, it turned out to be a disaster with me and the service dog, but it was a very nice place other than that. And they had all of that arranged. I didn't have to worry about it. So all of this factors in to your solo female travel experience. And if you're going for medical, then you may be able to add a couple of days on to have some relaxed time. And some places will actually suggest that. So those are some of the different types of solo travel. And once you pick out your destination and what you think you might like to do, then that informs the rest of the trip. And it makes it easier to move past the fear that stops women from traveling. Um, if you want to go, say, what's a good place? What's a good place? Let's say you want to go whale watching and you want to go off the coast of Virginia. Then you've narrowed it down. You know what you're going to do, and you know where geographically, roughly, you're going to stay. So then it's a matter of when is whaling season? When is whale season, whale watching season? And that informs everything else. So let's say you want to ditch the family and kids and go have this fun experience, but you don't want to go alone. Let's say you want to ask a girlfriend, to go with you. Then you're not just saying, we should take a trip sometime. You're saying, hey, I want to go whale watching off the coast of Virginia. Whale watching is between this date and this date. Do you have any time that you would want to go with me? And if they can, yeah, because that helps cut down that fear factor. And the other great thing about it is you have somebody split expenses with, half the gas, of course, you won't have half the airline tickets, but you'll have half the gas, half the parking charges, half the stay. And it's a good way to cut down expenses, but it also allows you to have that time to just relax and go. So absolutely, it's a great thing to do. But that makes it easier to get past the fear that stops women from traveling. And that's how you can get started. Now, if you want to do a group experience, there are all kinds of tour groups. And you can check into, if you're looking online, you can check into female tour groups or any kind of tour group that you can think of. A lot of senior citizens groups will adjust and allow you on if you're a little younger and not necessarily a senior citizen, but you want to go anyway. Sometimes churches put trips together. Sometimes some small credit unions and some small banks will still sometimes put trips together. And you've also got AAA and your travel agents that you can go to for information on group travel experiences, even though you're a solo woman. And I think that's a really good way to get started. And I think another way when you're looking how to get started in solo female travel is to look at, if you're traveling on business, can you add a day? I think that's a good way. Also, don't go too far from home. If you can do a solo female travel experience, and if you're nervous about it and so forth for the first time, if you want to be a little closer to home, go to the next city, go to the next town, go to a cross town, go to a burg. There's just a lot of things that you can do. So make your first experience something that you can enjoy and relax doing. Now, some people would just assume pack their luggage and go across the country for the first time. And I totally get that. And I would wholeheartedly support that. If that speaks to you, then go. But I also understand that if you want to be a little closer, you can get some really valid travel experiences doing that. Because there's always some things in the next town, and sometimes even in your own county or backyard, that you have not explored, and you've driven by the signs for things continually. And how many times have you thought, oh, I would like to do X, Y, and Z? Maybe your town has a zoo on the other side of town, and you've thought several times you'd like to go there, and you just haven't gone to the zoo since you were a kid. So maybe you could build that into your solo travel experience. Zoos tend to be very, very safe because they're set up for families. So generally places that are set up for family travel are generally some of your safer places. So yeah, thank you very much, Lori. I'm excited. It's not engraved in stone. It's not set in concrete, but they're aiming for that. She said that that would be the target and that she would hope. So that's going to be some spring travel. And I also am hoping this spring to do a series on railroad towns across the state of Tennessee and kind of where are they now from where were they then, because it's a fascinating bit of railroad history, and so many of these towns have other really interesting things that have sprung up next to them and close to them. So yeah, I want to go check out all that and see about doing a series in the spring. So that'll be more solo female travel adventures, but on a series. But certainly service dog first. And it's going to be van life, solo female van life, because I'll be in the van. So, yeah, cross your fingers that everything goes well, though, for Pipsy. So the plan is, and this is going to involve more solo female travel than I want to think about, but it's very detailed because I'm taking Pipsy out from Virginia. We are going to go to New Mexico, which is where he's going to rehome. He's going to rehome with my daughter. So I get to play with the grandbaby. So yay. But I've got the expenses to figure out, and most likely I'll be in the van. So for me, that makes life easier because I don't have to spend the night on hotels. I don't have to spend money on anything except gas and groceries. And guess what? I'm going to have groceries if I'm at home. So I tend not to count that expense as much because groceries at home versus groceries on the road, there's just not that much difference. So before going to get Pipsy, the plan is for me to take the dog to my daughter's in New Mexico, which means I'm going to probably be turning around from there, coming back here, picking up my girlfriend, and going back, or not back, but going to Kansas for the next service dog class. I could do it earlier, but I want to keep Pipsy with me as long as possible because mobility is out for him from now on, but he's still a service dog. He alerts like nobody's business. And if I'm in the house and I get into trouble, and let's say I have a really bad asthma attack and I get dizzy to where I'm going to pass out, then he can go get my husband. If I have a bad asthma attack and I need him to go get my inhaler, for example, he can do that. So even though he can't do mobility, there's just a lot of other things that get involved. But there's also more things I have to think about if I'm on the road with him. Like, where am I going to stop? Where are the dog parks? And I have to factor in all of that into the travel experience. But for me, having him with me enhances the travel experience. I'm actually kind of not looking forward to taking him to New Mexico and spending the part on the road coming back by myself because I'm really going to miss him because he adds so much to my travel. But there are extra things that you have to think about if you're traveling with an animal. But for a lot of women, it's worth it, completely worth it. Okay, so we've talked about several different types of solo travel and some ideas there and how to move past the fear that stops women from traveling. And we talked a little bit about how to get started with traveling by yourself, but we really haven't talked about some road trip ideas for women. And when you're looking at solo female travel, a lot of women are doing road trips. And they're maybe getting together with the girlfriends and having a getaway or all meeting at a location. So road trips for women can be a huge amount of fun. So that whole thing I just talked to you about taking Pipsy to New Mexico and all, and coming back and then going and whatnot, all of that is a road trip. Okay, all of it. It's all on the road. So some other common places, some ideas to think about going on a road trip as a solo female traveler. State and national parks If you like those can be great places to travel because you go to a national park, you go to the visitor center, always start there. Always. I don't care what kind of travel you're going, whether you've got family, whatever. If you're going to a national park, start at the visitor center. Okay. Get the lowdown from them. Find out, like, is there a driving loop? Is there a walking loop? What's there that you might like to do? Hopefully, you're going to research it ahead of time a little bit too. But national and state parks offer a really good value, and they have some really great benefits for going to see them. If you like to hike, if you like an educational experience, those kinds of places are great for that. If you like going to a city, then think about what kind of things do you like to do. Like if you're interested in quilts, Paducah, Kentucky has a big quilt exhibition every year, or at least they used to. I haven't read about it in a couple of years. I haven't looked it up. But there's also a lot of other things that you can do in Paducah, some museums and so forth, visitor center that you can go to. So those having a set destination for your road trip is one idea, but sometimes you don't want a destination. Sometimes the journey is the destination. So you might pick a road like Route 66, the Natchez Trace, and you may decide, or even Interstate 40, and you may decide that your journey is the destination and you're just going to go and you're going to explore and you're just going to see what's out there. A lot of women do that very successfully and have a great time. So those are kind of some road trip ideas. And really, as far as beginner solo travel trips to help take the stress out of traveling, plan ahead. Have your objective in mind, okay? And then look at what does it take to actually go, because let that inform what you need. And we've talked about Lori going to Canada. We've talked about like some medical tourism. The volunteerism experience with the mission trip that week was set by the host site. So we knew when we had to be in Alaska, and we had our lodging on the site taken care of. So we didn't have to worry about that. And so the rest of the trip about airlines versus driving and so forth, that came along pretty quickly. So if you're going to do a solo travel trip for the first time, you might want to try a group experience. That might be very helpful. But just relax, do your planning and do your research. And I think that really helps take a lot of the stress out. And if you're wondering about how to travel solo, I think I'd start right there. I really would. So thank you all. Lori, thank you very much for hanging out tonight. Peter was in with difficult news. So if you pray, do keep him in prayer, his family. There you go. And go out and travel and have fun, because remember, it's always on this channel, we're always about the hashtag Be Bodacious, which means you're not going to let life get in the way of living. So go out, have fun, and don't let life bog you down, okay? I'll see you on some videos later this week and Saturday night at 7:30. Good night, you all. Good night.